Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tuesday Night Bull. Unfortunately enough, we've only got a single match that we can actually broadcast in this particular evening, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because I've got a tingling sensation that it might just be a good one. Welcome, one and all. My name is Tudors. Alongside me, I've got none other than Whippet. I hope you're doing well, my friend, despite the fact that it is boiling out here in Western Europe.
It is very warm to say the least, but hopefully the hot weather is going to lead to some very hot siege indeed. And I think this matchup, as you mentioned, might have some potential for that. Again, it will be Poggy Woggy versus the Deviants, our only one and only matchup of the evening. Of course, we had a cancellation, the other one that was scheduled. So we shall bring you the best of the one map we have available for you. And I am looking forward to this one.
Yeah, as am I. Naturally, this is going to be a relatively interesting matchup just because of the fact that we basically got one of the teams that has already basically solidified their position in the top four going against the one and only team thus far in Season 3 of Bull that actually has yet to scramble any points together whatsoever. The Deviants, they find themselves in not the greatest position. I think it's definitely fair to say that, but if you did actually keep an eye on their performances over the last couple of weeks, I would, for one, make the case that in their past matchup when they went up to go against, I think it was the Ludens themselves, who, by the way, also played yesterday against Team Trident on Villa. I think that matchup ended 7-4, if I'm not mistaken. But the Deviants, they had a lot of really, really good stuff to show. They are a team with a lot of potential that just hasn't necessarily been reached yet, and that's not a bad thing per se. Keep in mind, we're only 3 weeks in. They still have a very, very long time throughout Season 3 to finally reach their peak.
Yeah, they certainly do have lots of time to develop and really cohese as a team and get used to this environment. And, well, you mentioned that they are yet to find themselves off the block and get some points. They are sitting right now on that 9th position, Team 9 below them. But I believe Team 9 getting a forfeit victory on this Playday, so they'll be able to get those points from that. But at the end of yesterday's Playday, I can bring you the standings. We can't bring it up on screen for you, but I can give you somewhat of a rundown of it. So, Man I Love Frogs are leading with a 9-point hold on that for that number 1 seed. Lockdown Luton is holding in second place, 6 points to their name. Veggie Patch coming in tied on points in third place with 6 as well. Poggy Woggy, the team you're going to be seeing in action here tonight, well, they're going to be in fourth, 5 points to their name. Going down the standings now in Plymouth Mandem, 4 points. Team Triton 4 as well. Team Atlas 3 points. Combat Wombats to single point. Deviants in the 9th position with none. And as of yesterday's results, Team 9 were still on 0 points. But again, I believe they have that forfeit victory for today, so that will elevate them further up. But that does put pressure on Deviants. They need to get that result now. They need to find some success in this matchup, and if they can't do that, they're going to find themselves lagging behind even further, and that's just going to make their job of that recovery job even harder as these playdays keep rolling, because they are fighting for a very coveted position in the playoffs. Of course, the playoffs for the season will be at Lens, so if they want to be there, they want to be able to earn their spot, so they need to sort of, put on the points.
Indeed they do. The one thing that I actually will say about the current position in which Poggy Woggy find themselves in, naturally you did say that they are technically safe right now in the top 4 with 5 points to their name, and because of the fact that both the Ludens as well as Veggie Patch, well, they technically have played their matches. I believe it was Veggie Patch that got a forfeit win over IOM. That gave them 3 points as well. But the Ludens, they unfortunately had lost their matchup yesterday against Team Trident. Now, the interesting thing about it is that this is the perfect opportunity for PW to technically leapfrog those 2 squads in the event that they're able to grab themselves the full 3 points. And that puts them just a single point right behind the Frogs. Now, naturally, up until yesterday, the Ludens and Frogs, they were tied for first place. The only thing that really separated the 2 squads was the overall round differential. PW, they've got a real shot at technically edging their way even closer towards that pole position. Naturally, they do have to rely on the Frogs, potentially just getting themselves 1 or 2 points from an overtime matchup in the next couple of weeks to follow, but I do have a really good feeling about Poggy Woggy being able to close that gap in the next couple of playdays.
Yeah, certainly. So as you mentioned, this is a massive opportunity for them to leapfrog a number of positions and put themselves, I believe, 1 point behind. I know if you were following Season 2, a lot of this is going to be very reminiscent. The top kind of batch of teams, the top 5 or so, battling it out very closely. No, not much of a margin of error between these teams. And I have a feeling this season's somewhat going to repeat what we saw with teams always jockeying for position, leapfrogs based off upset results the previous day. We have great potential for that. And PW set themselves up now for a great position And if they can hold that position, if they can just keep with consistent results from this day on, if they get the victory, of course, they're going to be able to lock out that position and really, really put themselves in a great position. And again, sitting in P2, you also have that safety net of you can fall down a few places, you can afford maybe a bad day or two, and still remain within that playoff bracket.
Speaking of having bad days, naturally the last matchup for the Deviants wasn't, well, it wasn't necessarily a bad day, but it definitely could have been better. The team that actually had an absolutely outstanding day, that was PW themselves. In case if you guys unfortunately missed out on that particular matchup against CW, then you should go ahead and first rewatch that VOD because it was absolutely mind-boggling. We played on Chalet, and CW, they had a very, very commanding lead. They basically were able to reach match point 6 rounds way before PW even actually had a say in the matter whatsoever. And PW, they were able to grab themselves 2 points from that entire matchup. They won in overtime because of the fact that they won 7 flawless rounds in a row on Chalet. It was an absolutely redonkulous performance. And naturally, coming out of last week, they're going to be riding just an absolutely sort of bombastic wave of momentum that is going to be really, really difficult for the Deviants to shut down in this particular playday. Now, I do believe that we also have confirmation as to which particular location we'll be visiting. Our war zone of choice naturally cannot be Oregon or Chalet because those are the 2 autobans coming on in. But we can go ahead and actually skip through the rest of the video because unfortunately enough we don't have an asset to show you guys on stream, but we can definitely just present it as per usual. We are going to be visiting Cafe tonight.
Which is a very, very interesting map. Indeed, we haven't seen a lot of it, and at least in my recent cast, it's not been a map I've seen a tremendous amount. It kind of does sit in that T4 trifecta I like to describe, where it's always a common map to see. It's something that teams tend to be comfortable on. But we've seen a shift in the climate. With the addition of Flores, key positions have somewhat been more vulnerable to the use of those RCXDs, and again, with that introduction of Flores and those explosive cars, the Mute-Mozzie combination has risen the prevalence again, meaning that we're in a very heavy informational denial climate when it comes to how Cafe works. And when you see teams at this level, information is such a valuable resource, and you can choke in the private team of that information. You can set yourselves up for a massive victory and a massive kind of stronghold position. And we do see that Poggy Woggy will be starting on the defensive Cafe, so they have that initial inherent advantage of they can shape the sites and they can deny a tremendous amount of information. You got to think about this on your drone entries. How many times, especially going upstairs, you've only got 2 staircases, a mute jammer in the right position, a Mozzie Pest to have backed it up or on a completely separate area, chokes at that information, and even then when people go down the roam in the middle or bottom floor, Pests, mute jammers can all be deployed to really make this narrow entryways for drones that bit harder and choke out information, force it to be a premium.
Yeah, info has always been a valuable commodity, especially on a map such as Cafe itself, where there are just far too many angles that are all known to mankind that you have to worry about it each and every single given turn with each and every single second that actually passes on the clock. It can be rather nerve-wracking for an attacking squad, to say the very, very least. The one thing that I will admit is very interesting about this particular matchup, though, is the fact that Cafe, specifically in Season 3, is considered uncharted territory both for PW as well as the Deviants. Naturally, in the earlier 2 playdays, both squads ended up playing on Oregon as well as Chalet. So this is the first time we're going to actually get a bit of a real feel as to how well they can actually perform on Cafe. And I'm personally really, really excited to see it. And naturally, you did also say that PW, they're going to be starting off on the defense, the more favored side when it comes to Cafe in general. And because of the fact that PW are just overall a much more potent squad than the Deviants, I just got a feeling that they might run away with this matchup. This is something that I said before we actually even went live. I am fearful of the fact that this may be a bit of a stomping.
It's always something you have to be fearful when you see a team like PW sitting so high in the standings against their opposition that has somewhat struggled out of the gate so far. I'll reserve judgment or reserve prediction until we get to that 3-round phase, and then maybe I'll air my opinion. I always like to see how it will go, especially when you mentioned uncharted territory. We've not seen these teams take on this map just yet in this season. And again, no VOD on each other, no direct information. It will be playing by the seam of the strat book if they can bring out the better plays, and it's going to be the best team on the day is going to take the victory victory here. Again, there's no counter-stratting, there's no options for that. I will say, the one thing that does concern me somewhat is the fact that PW are starting on that defensive side, and at least historically, Cafe has been defense-weighted, especially you just got to think when we were in the heat of that utility meta, how difficult it was for an attacking side to really kind of force their way through. It's not going to be the same story now. Utilities, or that utility dump meta is far gone. We're in a more aggressive styling, but the defense can still slow it down and can bring elements and kind of foreshadow that past we've just seen of that old meta by bringing up a massive amount of shields, angles, and make every inch of that top floor, and particularly very treacherous to walk on, whether it's from angles deep in Freezer or threats down below with Valkyrie, C4s, or pulses, even just raw information of calls down below, because that entire piano stage area is well documented, well understood. Everyone knows where the key traffic areas are and how to land those C4s appropriately.
Indeed, from the last couple of matches that I actually saw, I specifically on Cafe, and this isn't necessarily within Bool, although we have had our fair share of Cafe matches played. We have seen, for example, the likes of the Frogs going up against Team 9. We saw a couple of staple bans. Naturally, you had your Thatcher, but that's just relatively day-to-day business. Valkyrie, though, is the kind of operator that is basically just in the eyes of Cafe, a relatively standardized band. And I won't necessarily be surprised if Valkyrie is going to be sat on the bleachers this time around. The one topic that I actually did want to bring up is the overall impact that an operator such as Aruni can have. Naturally, we had been discussing how we've, to a certain extent, have shifted out of the very, very old boring meta of just simply dumping out utility, but ever since Aruni's introduction, it kind of feels like a small little resurgence, or at least kind of like, you know, the heart monitor, the IV, it's starting to throw out a couple of signals from that past meta. Just ever since Aruni was introduced, this is something that we have seen a whole lot of on Chalet, for example. There are just so many really, really random doorways where you can stick your Surya gates onto, and then it just creates another massive headache that the attackers have to deal with. In Cafe, it's no exception whatsoever. And speaking of Cafe, oh my, how much I would love to have myself a cup of tea over by the library. We're going to be heading on straight into the matchup with PW once again, starting off on the attack, or starting off with the bans and on the defense.
You want a cup of tea outside a cafe? I'll tell you what I want, to dive in some of the snow beside those streets, because the weather here is cooking me alive, but hopefully I can still perform in this. So our first bans to make our way through, of course, it will be the offense losing the first operator, and it's Thatcher. This is somewhat of a foregone conclusion. Who's really surprised at this one? EMPs are a blanket wire, a kind of a universal disruptor of gadgets on the offensive side, so removing him is easier than dealing with the damage he can do in a round. Again, somewhat of a crutch and comfort pick for many teams, and there's that Flora, as I mentioned. Those drones can have such an impact. They can do so much work, and again, they're very oppressive. He has 4 of them. He can put them away. He can use them for relative safety. So again, easier to deal with now than in the round.
It's relatively interesting. I kind of feel like the floor is maybe a target ban on the side of PW, because the last time that PW had played, I believe it was against Team 9. This may have been actually at the very, very start of the season, and indeed it was. There was a floor's target ban over towards PW, and it came out from the Deviants, meaning that they may have gotten some kind of homework done in the last 2 weeks since we initially kicked off Season 3, which I think is really, really smart of the Deviants, but at the exact same time, I might not be able to kind of speak for them whatsoever, because they did also pull out a sledge ban against ION, which I thought was just utterly rancid, and it made absolutely no sense. But we'll just have to wait and see. Naturally, we have Valk and Mira. They're going to be rounding off the defense bans. Not necessarily all too much of a surprise either, I would say. What I am a bit surprised about, at least just from the initial flash of the picks, is we're going to the top floor, and there's no presence of an Aruni whatsoever, which is a bit befuddling.
Normally, I would agree with you on that one, but I do have to draw one bit of attention, and that's going to be the Vabs. That is the ace up the sleeve of PW right now. Vabs has put in an amazing performance, and I mean, the very opening game of the season for PW, I believe, getting very close to the kill record, at least threatening Season 2's kill record, I believe. So again, keep your eye on Vabs if you do see that 6th pick on the divisional away from that Mozzie, and that is going to be, you know, denying that easy information and making it difficult to isolate and pick out this one solitary roamer. And we've seen in the previous matches out throughout the season how devastating he can be if given the chance, just given those brief moments of opportunity to be an active threat, an active gun. And we see reinforcements going upstairs, and strategy-wise, at least in terms of placements of utility, this is looking rather standardized. I'm not going to be expecting bleeding edge right now, but this is pretty standard. They're not opening up the freezer, they're not fighting for that angle, they're going to wait and really rely on Deviants having to come to them and be faced with these roadblocks throughout their process. And the first one is going to be getting through these walls, or perhaps even the first one might even be dealing with that vigil down below.
One thing about the actual vigil, though, naturally the last time that we saw Vabs in action on the vigil, I think it must have been either on Clubhouse, it may have potentially, it's not on Cafe because this is the first time these two squads are visiting Cafe indeed. I'm pretty sure it was either on Clubhouse or Villa. I genuinely can't remember where I last saw Vabs, but as you said, he was threatening the kill record. He was an absolute nuisance for the attacking team, except he's going to probably have to think twice about which runouts he goes for or which angles he chooses to peek, just because of the fact that Spack is rocking the Nomad, and if used accordingly, Vabs may not be able to create the opportunities that PW needs to ensure victory.
Couldn't agree more, and this is where you got to look at perhaps if they were relying on their own presence, the Nomad ban could have been a useful attribute to have. They saw the little sensor array going off on that drone, so they know that's an active threat they must deal with. But Selma Chargers make very short work of this wall on red, and well, the entryway's been made. The first to drop, I believe, was the Ace, following up with the drone to make sure everything is clear down below. But that disruption caused by that Wi-Fi router in the back of Vabs is just going to be causing a little bit of nerves, anxiety, playing in the back of the mind of everyone in the Deviants, knowing that there is an active threat nearby. The ADS is going to get spotted out, knowing they have to burn it away before they can clear away this shield. But Zofia, well equipped to do this job single-handedly. Bates one out, one shot away. The hide swings, and the shots land close, but not close enough to find some damage, so that's going to be an easy start there. We see the Ace takes around just over half HP worth of damage. Unknown of the source of it now, but as this round plays out, that could be a massive detriment for Dumfries.
Potentially. Dumfries is going to have to play this just a bit more conservatively than usual. Restroom has now been droned out entirely, now the Deviants, they can claim control of this piano portion of the map all to themselves, but one hurdle that they have yet to actually jump over is getting past those Kaid Electro Claws. If they're able to dispose of them, that makes their lives a whole lot easier, but I guess they have something else in mind. They're going to try to breach open Trash Wall and get a default plant over, but that's basically just another issue arises from that just because of the fact that you can't, well, tangibly clear out Freezer. Sundanos is the first to fall, and Closer is going to be able to not trade it back, but he's actually going to be able to pile on top of that, takes Spack out of commission, and Dumfries is the next to fall. Mr. Joe chiming in with one of his own, leaves Kovac all on his lonesome, narrowly misses a couple of shots onto the head of Mo, but secures the DBNO, has to stick the reload, and now he's got so many different things to worry about as he's slowly being electrified to death. His position now well known as he shuts down Vabs. Now just two more players to power through. Definitely winnable, but given the time, I would argue not so much.
Well, he's got 15 seconds to work some heroics. He at least knows there's a down player inside of Freezer, walks through, stuck by that Legion mine, and surely that is all she wrote for this one. Time ever ticking down, the Kaid relaying information and trying to plant that diffuser right above the rotation in Freezer. Well, that is not going to spell for a long life, and that's going to be the round in favor of the defense of PW. I mentioned Vabs, and that opening kill really sort of the cascade of kills in favor of the defensive side, finding 4 in rapid succession without an answer. But we saw Kovac there try claw back as best they could, only be able to find, I believe, 2 kills and 1 down, nearly writing a chapter of heroics in this season, but couldn't quite find the final moment of magic to piece it all together. Round number 2,
if there were just a couple of extra seconds, let's say 30 to 40 seconds, it definitely would have been doable, and Deviants could have potentially been sat on that first round, but that's in an alternate universe, sadly.
An alternate reality with a different timeline. As we see in the round number 2, down below the kitchen we go, and well, I think we're in store for a pretty standard rotation of sites. Once again, we'll draw your eye on the Vabs. He's now on Womai, so he has
interesting.
Team reliant utility now. Has to throw those pancakes in areas to help and assist the team. Again, double catchers working to really make it a difficult task to breach through anything or clear away key areas such as shields. But he can't risk going out in that room, dying early and losing that key utility later on in the round. We do see the mute getting brought out by Mo, and well, again, I love to see the mute getting brought out. It will do a lot of work to be able to A, deny the walls getting opened easily, choke at information, and do all the wonderful things that a mute tends to do. But piling on a Mozzie here, putting in a good shot as well to really, really compile and put a stranglehold on the information game. We do see that extension down in towards Kochek. A likely strategy, but they are going to reinforce it up later. I think perhaps double guessing themselves, making sure they don't want to give anything up, and knowing they have utility that can really drag this round down into deep water for Deviants. They decide to patch it up, put a mute gemmer to protect it, and wait and bide their time as the offense begin to crawl their way up the roof of this building. The pilgrimage to the top of Cafe begins. Some shots whiz over the head of Hyde, but nothing connects, no damage found, and that skeleton key begins to pick the lock of these hatches upstairs, but will they be able to find success of this top-down clear?
You did touch on the fact that Vabs, given the operator that he's currently playing, should technically do his best to keep his life intact for as long as humanly possible, but he's actually on the top floor assisting the Hyde on the roam, and I guess he's already failed at doing that because Spack was rewarded with the first frag. Vaps dropped down from Shaiko back over towards Pillars, so I guess that could have gone even worse for PW in the event they would have also lost Fabs, but luckily enough for PW, they're able to, well, essentially kickstart the round in a 5v4 scenario after just 60 seconds. Not the ideal amount of time that you would have wanted to waste, but it's still something. It's just a very, very sort of difficult scenario that PW find themselves in, with Deviants already making quick work of the entire map and now already exerting tons of vertical pressure. We're not even about to actually surpass the halfway mark of the round. PW are going to start feeling the heat rather rapidly, but Mo, that was dirty if I've ever seen a shot like that.
Well, Mo can certainly take the heat in the kitchen, does a wonderful job, shoots up with the SMG-11 and finds the opening, kills Sandano's fall. So that's your buck, that's that easy verticality gone, that skeleton key no longer an asset to work with. Dumfries tries to find some shot through the railings but couldn't quite connect. They're going to have a lot of verticality, so every position no longer safe, and there's a kill from those vertical positions. Mo not quick enough for the draw of the SMG this time, so PW begin to lose and hemorrhage away player count. As Deviants have the advantage now, 4 versus 3. Less than a minute left to work with those. They begin to work down the white stairs, perhaps trying to make a split execution towards this side, or maybe even committing to this hatch. We see both Selmas used and deployed, so they might be attempting a drop down here. They have the option to them, but every second now burning away, and they've got to make this happen really fast. They have that opening instead of freezer, and they might have telegraphed their move, but they have to make it happen sooner rather than later. And we see the player in coffee prone, lying in wait. No threat is there, but gets caught out. That's going to be Vabs, though, finds one. The player has been down. That is closer, and that's going to be the player, that Legion holding freezer. Oh, what a shot from Mr. Joe. Finds one on the magpie, and through the smoke gets Dumfries. It's all down to Kovac once again. 15 seconds left to work with, but surely it's all too much to ask. Diffuser stranded in no man's land, and against 2, vaults on in, but the sound cue is there, and surely walking into demise. A tricky encounter around the coffee bar, but with such little time left, it's all for nothing as Mr. Joe gets that final kill. But what an effort from Mr. Joe indeed, with that shot through the smoke, denying that planned attempt, and ultimately spelling disaster for the Deviants.
It was quite ridiculous, I'll tell you that much. The PW, they had basically everything working against them, all the way from the fact that, well, they were maintaining the man disadvantage, to all the map control that they had lost, to the fact that they were entirely barren on utility and they only had their actual firearms and game sense to push their own agenda. And they were able to accomplish that really, really well, just because of the fact that we had the likes of Joe as well as Closer taking very, very unorthodox gunfights. That is something that, well, obviously you could hear me gasping at, like I was watching an opera for the first time in my entire life and was completely starstruck. It was ridiculous, the fact. Yes.
I've never, that is the first time I have heard an opera reference used in Siege.
I mean, technically we are visiting Cafe. It is a massive part, it's a massive part of Russian arts. I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah,
have you ever been?
It's appropriate.
That's the question.
I have indeed.
Oh.
I have indeed. Yeah. And surprisingly enough, I actually haven't been to Russia. I went to an opera in the UK when I was on a school trip about like 3 years ago.
Damn, that's crazy. That sounds like that. Okay, I'll give it to you. You can make that analogy now. You have the right. Yeah.
Indeed, I do.
Congrats.
But still, the main thing that I actually did want to focus on is that this kind of differentiates PW and Deviants. What? I almost said Defiance. That's something else entirely. No, it separates PW and Deviants.
XD.
I know Ubisoft did that intentionally. There is no other way to slice it.
Have you seen the marketing, like the poster thing that they put
Yeah,
up
I
with
have.
that XD stick?
It's great.
Listen, I'll say this, right? How are
Yeah.
your opinions and thoughts on that game? They've you know, I think the dev team behind it are having fun.
Oh, of course they are. That's the main part about it, right?
Yeah.
It's just so I don't necessarily want to call it like a self-aware franchise or a soon-to-be franchise. X defines kind of the way that FNAF is becoming a self-aware franchise.
No. I don't. How? I'm sorry. How have we managed to go from talking about operas to how? How have we done this to ourselves?
It happens, okay? Just roll with it. We've been through worse, man.
No, this might be the worst derailing we've ever had. Well, speaking of something getting derailed, that's going to be Sandanos getting derailed from existence. Kovacs there to get the trade-off, though, instantaneously. So 4 versus 4 in player count as the entryway upstairs begins, but I'd imagine the upstairs conflict soon to continue, as this is, of course, a reading defense, and, well, everyone knows verticality is king in Castle. Well, nearly losing their head in the effort of holding that sneaky position. Not going to be too keen to take any more fights in this round.
No, that is certainly a red flag telling you that you should not be overstaying your welcome at all whatsoever. But he's actually going to choose to persist on that top floor. Until his dying breath, he shall hold onto that cocktail bar with an iron fist. And sure, he does have one retreat route back into laundry, and lucky for him, he could make it down safely because that main hallway downstairs isn't being contested whatsoever. But 70 seconds are all that we have left to work with, and the Deviants, well, they're not necessarily making the greatest of progress either. They're a bit indecisive, or at the very least scrambling for a sense, an idea as to how to flush out Mr. Joe, but I guess he's gonna do the Deviants' work for them. Now everyone on the side of PW is back on the bomb side, essentially just preparing themselves for the metaphorical hurricane that is to come.
While using the cluster charges to great effect, as Mr. Joe will be victim to this Russian device of destruction. And well, that was an unexpected opening. That's going to grow the advantage for the Deviants 4 versus 3. Flushing out the defense of PW, they can no longer sit comfortably, and verticality in so as well. Kovac finds the kill on him, and that's going to be a tricky round as the Hide's going to be left in Deviant closer now in a 1 versus 4. 20 seconds to work with, and his teammate, his compatriot, downed only meters away from him, but not likely to survive the incoming wave of threats. He sprays off, squeezes that trigger down towards the drone, finds the head of Magpie, a wonderful shot indeed. He might have time to revive his compatriot and get himself back in this fight. It's a 3 versus 2 now, but that plant's going down. Nothing can stop it now as Back finds the Hide, confirms that kill, and Closer now back in a 1vx, this time a 1 versus 3. 30 seconds until we hit critical, and scampering away with his life holding on by a thin thread, but taken away by the 308 ARX, and that is a victory for Deviants.
And Spack was there to collect the final 2 frags as well. Stat padding, one might argue, but hey, he's just nailing the coffin and ensuring that we can speed up Cafe as much as humanly possible. Naturally, we do have to touch on the fact that Dumfries was the one that brought out Fuse, and he was basically able to use that particular chunky Spetsnaz operator to even greater effects than way back in our mid-season reinforcements of Red Crow. Or actually, no, wait. Was it Red Crow when Fuse got his buff? No, that was when Glass got his thermal scope, I think it was. It must have been, I think, around Op Health when Fuse got his buff, and he was just an absolute machine. That is the kind of sense of PTSD that I'm dealing with. Dumfries may or may not have just broken me.
I'm trying to think about. I'm trying to like go through my my random brain of useless siege knowledge. The only thing I can pull out of Fuse is when Sexy Cake used to use Fuse on Clubhouse to push down the dirt tunnel with a shield.
Oh, speaking of that, remember way back in the day when Border was actually still part of the map pool, and Vitality. I think it was actually Vitality, if not, it was another one of the French teams that would constantly bring out a Fuse shield to take control of half wall in an armory take as well. Fuse has had so many weird and random appearances in the course of Siege as a whole, but I love it.
And I just think Fuse is one of those operators that just pops up randomly and can have like a devastating effect or none at all. It really is all or nothing when you bring that Specimen's operator into the fray. But upstairs we go once again, returning to the
Yes.
bar cocktail area, and we're going to be seeing somewhat of an adaptation, some small changes made. The use of the Goyo being brought out now, it kind of shows to me that they want to burn a little bit more time once that initial piano area begins to fall away from their control. A reasonable and smart decision to make, as we see once again a lot of pressure all mounting from this western side. They're all queuing up around these hatch drop downs, and that's going to be the primary pushing point. I would like to see someone act as a pressure relief valve and, you know, maybe attack from up those white stairs or something else, but again, they had success doing this previously, and they have an Aruni to contest with this round, so things have changed. The setup is different now, and will they be able to make the adaptations on the fly as Vab sets up in a very good position? The drones are just inches away from discovering his position. He looks down towards the Gemini Replicator, finds it, and, well, removes it from fray for the time being, but his position now compromised. No easy kills on unaware attackers. He swings wide, though, and finds it down in the Dumfries. Instantly traded off by Kovac, though, as that recovery is on for Dumfries. Yes, it will be, so it remains at 5 versus 4.
But not for long, as the Hyde is able to clap back. Spack is now down in the dirt, and that leaves us in a 4v3 scenario with the HP now being in favor of PW quite firmly as well. Dumfries, he's back in action, and he's still alive and kicking, and the Hyde, well, he's certainly giving the Deviants quite the kick as well as he removes Kovac from the playing field. And that doesn't bode all too well for the Deviants either. They have so many different layers of this defense to deal with, to the point that they have yet to barge their way into Piano whatsoever, and after they accomplish that, well, guess what? You still have to get somehow inside of the freezer, potentially even the restroom, and get the diffuser down safely. There are just far too many hurdles that they have to climb, and there's simply not enough time to do it all.
Certainly so, a very tricky encounter around that bathroom opening, and this is going to be a real pivotal point of this, and that's going to be Mr. Joe pops up like whack-a-mole and finds the head of Dumfries, the ace finally removed from the fray, and that's going to be Mr. Joe finding yet another one. It's going to be a 4 versus 1, and Sandanos walks into that hog as well. Oh, come on, come on, Mr. Joe is waiting to send you to the respawn screen, and that is yet another round for PW on the defense. It's going to be leading now 3-1 as they move back down to the kitchen.
Mr. Joe is just having a field day at this quote-unquote shooting gallery. My oh my. Each and every single gunfight that he knowingly or not knowingly takes, he ends up winning. It's absolutely ridiculous what he's able to accomplish, and on top of the fact that he is currently top fragging in the server, he's doing it on a support role nevertheless. He is literally playing a Kaid, and I know one would make the argument that Kaid is kind of like a much more slower version of Jaeger, because you have drop and forget gadgets, and then you've got a massive optic that you can just use to pick off at heads, but still, 8 kills to your name. And we've only seen 4 rounds of play thus far. You are averaging 2 kills per round. You are the difference maker and the person that is setting the pace for this entire matchup. Joe, give yourself a pat on the back, but don't stop what you're doing, because I'm loving it.
It's absolutely sublime from Joe. They're leading the charge for his team in terms of kills, sitting on a hefty, dizzying heights of 8-1. A wonderful display from him so far. I mentioned perhaps keep your eye on Vabs, but perhaps I was wrong in my initial prediction. Keep your eye on Joe, as he's going to likely continue his reign of terror with that AUG A3. So let's see how this round unfolds. We only got 1 second left of our prep phase, and now it's time for the action. Once again, that Aruni is getting brought out by the Hyde, and what we mentioned, that Aruni adds somewhat of a flavour of that old utility-heavy meta that was of old. And now, having to deal with that again, do you have a number of throwables, etc., to burn away those Saria gates without having to sacrifice key utilities, such as what we saw in the previous round, the Ace using a Salma charge, or Bead using drones? You have to have the right amount of gear to do it, and well, you've got the Jackal, you've got Nomad, and you have Zofia available, so it looks like that won't be as much of a problem for them in this round. Of course, if these operators can stay alive, that is.
That's very, very true. Also, one more interesting thing to point out is Sundanos has a secondary hard breach, so I can only assume that if everything goes according to plan for the Deviants, that they will be, well, planning on attacking the bomb site from 2 separate avenues. Last time around, they had a really, really great idea in trying to go for a default execution over towards Freezer, but unfortunately enough, PW mopped the floor with them, because Joe was just having an absolute toll on them with that AUG, just randomly peeking a lot of unexpected angles in Deviants. They were not privy to it whatsoever. Now, they've taken a stance back. They're reevaluating exactly what PW are doing, and they're trying to act accordingly. Naturally, this is a lot of free territory that is being given up on the side of PW, and it is exactly what the Deviants need to work with in order to force out their agenda. And we're just about to surpass that halfway mark of the round. The Deviants, they have a lot of map control to work with, and a freebie is going to be spotted out by Kovac to light up the kill feed for the first time in round number 5. Already a great start off, and now you can start to imagine that it may snowball once again in the favor of the Deviants. But will PW be able to clap back? We'll have to wait and see.
That could have been the freest opening kill I have seen in a long time in Siege. It seems like the Hive just wasn't aware that verticality had been opened up. And while speaking of teams unaware, it doesn't seem the offense are aware of Joe's position right now. He's an active C4 threat down below.
Oh, Dumfries, hello.
In rapid succession. And that might just trigger a retake attempt from the side of Joe. Tries to creep up these red stairs unknown. You do have to worry though, there is the Nomad. Those air jabs are in play. We hear one whistling off in the distance, so Mr. Joe does think better of it. Falling back down towards lobby. He's going to run into a player holding his position. And well, that's going to be his back. Finds that kill. Dropping down will be one, but followed up by a second as the ace gets that AK to sing as Vabs can't hold off against more than one with that P10 Roni. And yet again, Deviants find a round on the attacking side, making it a 3-2 hold. And well, they're in a good position right now to get us to a level playing field. And you were concerned that this could be a blowout match. Deviants bringing their A game, really trying to get themselves on that scoreboard this season. And right now, they can get this to a 3-3 split. They put themselves in the best position they've had all season to do so.
That is very true, and Cafe is a bit of a different story compared to what we see in the likes of, let's say, Clubhouse or Villa, where those maps initially started off where you would see yourself a 4-2 split in favor of the defense being something very average, but now, in the current climate for those other maps, those maps such as Clubhouse and Villa, 3-3 splits are much more common. That isn't necessarily the case for Cafe right here. Ideally, PW would have now been sat in a 4-1 score line and now having to actually visit a tertiary bomb site for the second time thus far, but because of the fact that the Deviants won out on Kitchen nevertheless, it puts them in, as you said, the prime position to get themselves some very desperately needed points by the time that we actually conclude this particular matchup. If they're able to back themselves 2 for 2, or technically 2 for 3 on Kitchen attacks, and ending off this first half with a 3-3 split, I might have to start backing up the Deviants.
Yeah, okay, I can certainly see that being an argument for this one. I mean, Deviants again, it all matters on this round how I feel about the momentum going into the second half of this matchup. If they can get this to a 3-3 split, they put themselves in a great position moving on to the defense side, which at least historically has been more weighted to win. So we move on up, the traditional ascent up to the rooftop begins, and this has been the story for Deviants so far. It's a top-down push, they're not trying anything different, they're not really straying too far from that path, and again, that could be somewhat readable for PW if they do attempt to do so. It looks like Vabs might be trying to challenge initially. Spots a drone. Will it go down the stairs and spot him? I don't believe it has. Meaning that, well, Vabs, you're just fishing at this point. We'll wait for your prey to walk into your line of sight. But this drone might just spot him out. And, well, there's tracer rounds from the above as well. Follow up that drone. So a good escape from Vabs there. Stays alive, stays in this fight for a little bit longer. But has another angle to worry about. Fight this from a distance and gets caught out by Kovac then. Kovac's had a wonderful start of this round, or start of the split so far, 7-3. Really has been the brightest shining star for Deviants in this split. And, well, he finds the opening kill once again. 5 versus 4 in favor of the attacking side, in favor of Deviants. And right.
I actually did want to say that Kovac was nearly just a hair away from actually confirming the initial frag onto Vabs when he was still on the red staircase, and since I saw that particular gunfight ensue after Vabs took out the drone, I still had a sensation that Vabs would be the first player we'd lose in round number 6. And my suspicions, they were indeed confirmed, Kovac being the main culprit of that particular endeavor. And that does leave PW in not the greatest of positions. Once again, this is a copy pasta of last round, where PW have lost out on one of the first players on their side. Deviants are now exerting tons and tons of vertical pressure, but Closer, he's more than happy to receive. Starts whizzing out a couple of shots from that MP5K, and they do connect, but ideally he would have wanted to bag himself a kill, at least for the time being. And now, his position is well known thanks to that Inox scanner, and he has actually decided to dip out through kitchen prep. Now, you can actually see the PW, they've actually vacated a lot of the kitchen itself, and they're actually playing from the outskirts of the bomb site as well, something that the Deviants are going to have to be aware of so they don't wind up being bitten in the behind. Magpie is able to shut down closer, and with 35 seconds left, PW, they maintain the man disadvantage, and they have to somehow force their way to their 4th round.
It will not be an easy task indeed. You got 25 seconds and now a 4 versus 2. Mr. Joe knows an active threat just around him and finds down on a Magpie. Santanos, though, gets the hide, and that clears up the side pressure. Mr. Joe, though, waltzes into his own demise. Spack is there to claim his life and claim yet another round for Deviants, 2 in a row. And that ties this map up 3 rounds apiece, moving into side swap. This is the best position Deviants have found themselves in all season right now. They are in a great position. If they can continue their momentum, if they can keep pushing and building on the 2 rounds that they've just won in succession, they might be able to find their very first points of the season. But let us not forget that for PW, if they can get a victory here for all 3 points, they will leapfrog 2 teams and find themselves sitting pretty in 2nd place in the standings, and only a single point behind Man I Love Frogs. So there's a lot to play for in this matchup. In round 7, the tensions continue to rise as Bar Cocktail will be our first side of choice for the Deviants.
And I feel like the Deviants' lives have also gotten, in general headlines, just that much easier, not only because of the fact that they are just coming right off the bounce of 2 round wins entirely unanswered on the side of PW, but now they're shifting off of the defense, historically known to be the more favored side on Cafe, and they can continue to mount up their win streak as long as everything goes according to plan. And if, for example, nobody else on the side of PW decides to chime in besides Mr. Joe, we've constantly touted throughout this entire matchup that Mr. Joe has been leading the charge. He is technically the shining star on the side of PW, but no one else has yet to actually break more than 3 kills, which is a bit worrisome. Everybody else on the side of PW, they need to start to step up, because PW, they desperately need those 3 points to narrow the gap between themselves and the Frogs. And if no one else on the side of PW, aside from Joe, can deliver, then the Deviants may potentially have a very, very easy breeze on this defensive half.
Well, only time can tell about that. One is it does look like we're witnessing PW offer a very different approach in attacking strategy. They're not funneling in via this typical area, or at least doesn't look like it. They're going to go for a more, unorthodox push, and it nearly nets an early advantage. Spack's going to find himself reduced to around 70 HP, nearly caught early from that white window. Sledge is available, bonks those hatches, sends debris sky high, but also gives us openings for the team to use. And while I spoke too soon, it does appear that we're going to a more orthodox push now. But these mute jammers in good positions to choke out information and make this initial push in the building an absolute headache.
One thing that I will point out is I'm loving the fact that the Deviants have actually opted to employ the Maestro this time around. Naturally, this is something that PW didn't opt to bring out during their tenure. Well, not tenure, but when they were on the defensive side. It could potentially be just another headache that PW have to deal with in the event that they aren't able to actually set enough utility off to the side to be able to deal with all of these different hurdles. And trust me, there are plenty of them as well on the side of the defense. We've got Aruni gates that we have to deal with, Vulcan shields, those technical magpies being brought out by Magpie himself, which, by the way, funny joke in case you read up on your lore. And then naturally, those evil eyes. There's just so much that PW have to deal with in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, there's a lot to worry about, lots to deal with, and these evil eyes proving to be a very beneficial tool of the trade. Oh my pie! Pixel perfect on the vibes, and that is going to be a waving goodbye to your Yana. You're losing the Gemini replicators and those 2 nifty fry grenades. And considering we talked about those evil eyes, those Goyo shields all scattered through this defensive strategy, those nades could have proven dividends, and meaning now Sledge must commit super close to this evil eye to clear it away, as it's relaying so much information and has that pesky advantage of being able to zap you from a distance. Spots an active threat close, and Zofia removes it from distance. And a good use of utility there, but look at that clock. We only got 35 seconds left to go, so it's time to rumble as Closer looks to get aggressive here. Has to do so as every second count leads their opposition a second closer to victory. Rooney prone, playing around this freezer door close to that trash default plant, but it looks like PW just don't have a key and entryway in. Sandanos falls though, and this could be the opening they need. They have to build on it. They must cascade. They've got 10 seconds left to go. A push for the white corridor is there. Mr. Joe finds one. Mike Pie falls. The swing is there. Mr. Joe gets two. Mo tries to get that plant down. The hide falls. The older sinks, but not enough as PW in the dying seconds close out a round. And well, nail-biting moments there. Not opting for a plant, opting to go for those kills. And a very scrappy victory indeed.
I was thinking to myself, the moment that I saw we had less than 40 seconds left to work with, I knew that this would have been a powder keg of a round just waiting to combust. And it combusted pretty hard. And it's not necessarily just because of the fact that Mr. Joe took matters into his own hands and practically opened up a lot of different avenues and just essentially allowed the rest of PW to chime in with their own kills. No, I want to draw our attention over towards the hide, because he was over by Skylight and he got the entry onto, if I'm not mistaken, the Aruni that was sat inside of the freezer. Now, naturally, freezer as a position, it technically ties the rest of the bomb site together. It is the central point of the entire top floor. If you lose control of that, you have no tangible way to contest the new hatch, the kiosk, the trash plant. There is so much that you just lose out on in the moment that your freezer player actually goes down. And because of the fact that the hide was able to just delete that Rooney from existence, it simply allowed the rest of PW to just utterly collapse on the rest of the Deviants' defensive players. We had Mr. Joe nabbing, what was it, a triple kill in that instance? And then Closer just coming in on janitor duty, cleaning up the last two players. And in a round in which I thought PW had no business winning because of the fact that they were very inefficient with their clearance and time management, they were able to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, efficiency is the key to this. I mean, what? Oh, Fabs finds the opening kill in a matter of seconds, and well, an efficient effort there. Kovac gets an instantaneous trade. Not quite sure how that encounter initially went down, but nonetheless, in the early stages of this round, both teams suffer a heavy casualty. One player down, and now, well, stuff is on edge. Can they find success? I believe it was a window repel that found the kill on this back. So. And again, because I believe I saw a body falling just outside of that garage by bottom right, so that is likely the case of that initial incident, and yeah, there it is. There's a stray gun, so that exactly was what happened. The white repel claimed the life of Spack, who has been slow on that setup on the top of white 2 rounds in a row, so I wonder if he might try and sharpen that one up. Otherwise, PW might have an option to find an early kill for several more rounds to come.
The one thing that I actually did want to ask is, what's more valuable, a C4 in the back pocket of Spack or 2 frag grenades in that of Vabs?
2 nades.
I think that the 2 nades are probably more valuable, I would agree, but all things considered, this was about as even-steven as a trade could have actually gone. In a normal instance, I would say no harm, no foul, but because of the fact that, well, the Deviants have brought out so many different roadblocks that PW just needs to climb over, yeah, I'd agree. Those frag grenades are just so much more valuable. Is Sondanos down below? Yeah, okay, he's over by pillar. I thought he was in the kiosk, and that would have been a Monka-S if I've ever seen one.
Utility being used there. We hear the zap of those evil eyes off in the distance as Kovac cowers behind that shield for the time being, and it's not going to get popped by the first impact. The second one will do the trick, but he can fall back, and he can sit pretty comfortably behind the second one. Opts to fall back even further, but that's a lot of utility already used clearing that single volcano shield, and there's not a set of grenades to help burn that second one, so realistically, that Goyo can sit in there and persist for as long as they want. Mr. Joe is gonna find one of the Kovac, however, as Dumfries drops prone, lets that all to spray away. So shots will connect onto the legs of Closer, I believe, as he crosses that cigar shop doorway. pop up as Mo falls now. Is that going to be Maestro lining up for a second fight, perhaps? Mr. Joe cautious. Here's that air jab detonate off from the distance. Magpie playing around those wide stairs. Sandano still not opting to continue that push up red and rotating away down towards white. 25 seconds left in this round. However, the 3 versus 3 left to go. 2 players backed up on red and 1 playing deep towards Shaiko. Rotates back in the cocktail, and now it will be a shootout in the white hallway. 1 falls a trade for both teams. Sandano stuck on that reload, desperately looking for a kill in favor of his team, but can't quite find it. Sophia gets aggressive with the pistol, but you're going to be up against the Ald with 81 rounds of hurt, and this plant attempt is surely going to fail. Yes, it is. Sandanos closes that one out as Deviant once again tie this map up 4 rounds apiece.
Naturally, we had the benefits of silhouettes on our screen, and we could basically start to piece together exactly what the right course of action would have been for PW in the event that they hadn't actually focused that much attention towards clearing out the 2 players on the top of the white staircase, because the last remaining player, if I'm not mistaken, was Spack on the Maestro, or it must have been Sondanos. I'm mixing things up, but regardless, there was a Maestro over by Shaiko, and we had Mr. Joe, who was flirting with the idea of vaulting into Freezer from inside a washroom. If he would have actually gone through with that initial thought process and just peer over towards Shaiko, you would have A, taken out the Maestro, but then B, relegated the last 2 players on the side of Deviants to simply sitting on the white staircase, an angle which, by the way, was entirely covered by your player in Pixel. That is a recipe for success on the side of PW, but unfortunately enough, naturally in Siege, when you have just so little time to work with, you start to react instinctively, and Mr. Joe's instinct was to try to shut down the 2 players that were over by white. He got 1 kill, he couldn't secure the other one onto Sondanos, which was a bit rough, but if he had gone for that Maestro instead, I'm almost certain that PW would have been able to extend their gap to 2 rounds instead of it being all tied up right now.
Couldn't agree more. This is looking like a far closer in comparison matchup than perhaps any of us here in the production booth were anticipating.
I didn't think it.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned, right, that I was going to, wait to give my judgment into the later stages, but I was ultimately thinking, okay, PW are on a stronger run right now, and momentum is a massive thing. They're running off the back of good results, they're sitting higher in the standings. On paper, Deviants look to be somewhat of a road bump for them, nonetheless. Not a chicane to this scale, but it's been a real difficulty for PW to find success here, and Deviants are really showing that, as we were mentioning, a team that has that level of players have really picked it up and are really putting things together. Their rounds are getting played out very well, and I mean, other than the fact that PW got a scrappy, aggressive victory in the opening offensive round, we could have seen Deviants now leading with 2 rounds in their favor. So we'll see how this one continues to play out as the kitchen defense offers a different set of challenges and puzzles to solve from the attacking side. And while they have a lot of bakery control, but you can't do a lot from bakery control. You need verticality to clear away those electric boxes to be able to open up that wall itself and create that line of sight deep in the site. And well, no one's pushing upstairs. No one's even attempting for it. So they're somewhat caught at a roadblock. They have to brute force their way through, and there's no clear option or way to do so.
Yeah, which is a bit strange. A lot of overall manpower is being committed over towards this bakery portion of the map, but it may start to pay off as Vabs is able to find the first Magpie. He's immediately going to trade it on out, and he's got players to worry about on the top floor, if I'm not mistaken. We've got Mo, who is currently on Repel, or that may be the hide, and 1 player directly down below him inside of Closet for the time being. There goes Sondanos, who's actually able to shut down Mr. Joe through that red rotate, which I'm pretty sure Mr. Joe wasn't even actually aware of, but now the rest of PW, they certainly are. In time, once again, starting to drain out quite rapidly. Magpie will finally be shut down, so we're back at an even playing field. In the hide, he's going to continue on that train by shutting down Sondanos. Now Spack, ensuring that, well, Closet is rendered entirely unplayable as Toxic Babes will be tossed on out, but naturally he's given up his position. PW, they have a much more tangible opening to work with for the time being. Question is, where's Dumfries? He's holding down the fort. In the event that he goes down, well, Spack is going to be in a very precarious position. Dumfries, this gunfight is crucial, and he's lost it. Spack has to single-handedly retake the bomb site, and that is a tricky task in and of itself. Closer now getting that defuse plan as Spack turns the corner and finds the hide. Now it's all down to Mo to provide coverage. Toxic Babes being tossed out once again, but they're not on target, and in comes Mo for the cleanup just when things came down to the wire and a bit too uncomfortable. PW were able to pull themselves together and secure the dub in the 2v1.
Dumfries, you've got to feel for that one in a must-win situation. The SMG-11's recoil just walked away, and those shotgun shells, well, weren't enough to connect to find a down or kill on that ace, and well, that spelled disaster for the side of Deviants. 5-4 advantage now for PW as Kitchen Service once again our war zone of choice. They are opting to replay and make adjustments on the fly. A wise choice considering it wasn't by much of a margin they lost, and last time they replayed a site they found the victory on it, so can they repeat that magic and get everything tied up to 5 rounds apiece? Well, only time can tell. As we move to our prep phase, it looks like at least a similar strategy is being employed as we do see that opening as that rotation made towards coat check, but will that be reinforced later on, or will they leave that available for usage throughout the round?
The one thing that I actually do kind of want to ask for the time being, and this might just be kind of all over the place because there's 2 topics that I want to talk about. The Deviants know exactly what went wrong in that match. It boiled down to the 2v3 scenario where Spack and Dumfries were miles apart from each other, and that kind of just ensured that their overall refrag potential plummeted. That is something that the Deviants have to be very, very wary of throughout the entire duration of this round. The next thing that I want to talk about is PW's overall philosophy for attacking this bomb site. Naturally, the Deviants, they saw success in going for freezer executions twice in a row. PW are going for, you know, standard bakery takes, which used to be the meta back when the rework of Cafe initially came on out. In the events that Deviants are, for example, not or unable to cope with either one of these 2 executions, then we can definitely see Kitchen being the worst bomb site featured tonight on Cafe. But the Deviants, they need to pull themselves together because this is the closest that they have ever been to tangible points. They need a round to tie things up and keep PW in check.
It would be a big set of points for them, even if they have to scrap all the way to overtime for them, as Vabs looks to find that initial engagement down towards VIP. Nothing quite landing or connecting yet, as Sandaro's face is staring up to the skylight, waiting for someone to perhaps drop into his jaws, but no one obliges him as of yet. A lot more of an extended roam presence. I will say this.
True.
This is a good adjustment from Deviants. They really are spreading their forces, but not putting them too thin, in my opinion. They're set up in good positions where they can rotate quickly in support, but this fight between Bandit and Zofia might be a critical one, as they are only millimeters away from finding a line of sight on each other, but Sandanos opts to vault on down the pillar and continue his rotation back down the side. Spots the players at a coat check, and maybe even sees the player out by the main door. Has to be careful in that rotation, and is so. Stays alive, stays intact, and doesn't burn a lot of time, but keeps that MP7, a potent weapon, available for later in this round.
Missed opportunity on the side of PW. They could have A, taken out Sundanos over by Skylight, and B, over by the main door, but now we still got all 10 players alive and kicking, and with 70 seconds left to work with, it's going to be scrappy to say the very least. Vab's currently isolated over by the main entrance, has 2 different avenues to worry about, directly behind him inside a coat check, and in front of him over by restaurants. And he has to divide his attention accordingly, as the rest of his squadron have already begun exerting some vertical pressure. Vabs, what are you toying with, man? Gets the first kill onto Vabs, onto Spack. Really, really good stuff, and that ensures that the man advantage now sits with PW. And now we just have to wait for the rest of the squad to come on in, basically kicking down the door and just shutting down Deviants. But no, the exact opposite's happening. The shoe's on the other foot, apparently. Dumfries finds one, Donos chimes in with the C4, and now we got a round on our hands.
This is going to be a bit of a brawl. We have under 30 seconds left. The Hide's going to be the next one to fall as Magpie claims that kill. And while Deviants look on record yet again to tie this level playing field, and make it level playing field, I should say. 15 seconds left to go. The PW have an answer. Mr. Joe plays by Whiskey, finds the shots, narrowly misses, but eventually gets that kill on the Kovacs, but surely it's too little too late, as that's going to be the diffuser left and surrounded by Freezer. Mr. Joe walks in, finds one lacking, but Sandanos is there to close it out with that MP7. And once again, it is tied up. 5 rounds of peace. We grow ever closer to the end of regulation, and overtime may be a threat looming just over the horizon if these teams cannot be separated.
It definitely could be, but either way, we're going to need these last 2 rounds of regulation to figure out if either one of these 2 squads is going to walk away with a full 3 points, or if we're going to have to hop over to rounds number 13 plus. We'll just have to wait and see, but we are going to be returning back to that top floor, and this is a bomb site in which Well, neither squad has actually seen all too much success on, and the main concerning factor on the side of Deviants is they aren't able to win out and essentially lock down their defenses on the first visit. When they revisit a bomb site, they're able to win it on out. If we're going to go ahead and follow history, just for the sake of this argument, PW are going to hit match points first, then Deviants, once again, in the passenger seat, are going to be playing catch-up, which is a rough position. The Deviants, they need something, just a tad, just a little bit more oomph, you know, just a bit more oomph, so they can get themselves that 6th round first, because that's what they need desperately. They need to force PW back to the wall. Deviants can't have their own backs turned to it first.
Couldn't agree more. They need to be able to go on the offensive, find their ability, and put the pressure on PW. If PW can sit in this position, and if they keep trading rounds back and forth, this favors PW far more. You know, if it goes to overtime, no matter the result, yes, it'd be great, Deviants. They'll get 2 or 1 point. It's a great result for them. They finally score. But PW are in a position where, yes, it's a close fight in the top of the table, but 2 points, that's still a good. They can still leapfrog one of their opposition, and that puts them up, moves them to 3rd. They're not going to complain. Of course, they'll want 3, but you know, this is a bigger deal. Deviants, you know, they're close. They're 2 rounds away from stealing in their first points, and making it 3 would be a massive statement for all the teams around them that they can go toe-to-toe, trade blows with one of the bigger teams on the upper side of the table, and that could be a massive result for them.
Definitely oh my goodness. Okay. Whew. Narrowly managing to, well, survive death at first glance. I believe that was a C4 tossed out from New Hatch, as I believe Sondanos has already exhausted his first Nokia brick from the couch itself, as Science is highlighting. So he's going to be, well, thanking his lucky stars that he's able to keep his life in tow, and he can actually continue to have an impact as he remains tagged, but not yet fragged. All 10 players still alive and kicking for the time being, and judging as to how quick PW are able to get past these hurdles in the initial baby steps of this round, it could potentially be round defining. Last time, they were not terribly efficient, but they were able to get the job done when it came down to pure mechanical skills and gunfights. So it was something that the Deviants couldn't really contest in when we had about 30 seconds left to work with. I feel like this might be a bit of a different story, as Magpie is currently dueling things out with Vaps down below. Sondanos now coming in, joining in on the fun, and takes him out of commission. Deviants have backed themselves the opening frag.
A great opening for them, but can they press this advantage? C4 in an awkward position, and I think Kovacs in a rock and a hard place now. He don't want to expose himself to try and get that recovery, as a single pixel of his arm displaced might spell his demise, and standing up might not be too great either. He destroys that drone, information not being relayed, but he is going to be stuck cooking away. Escapes with 20 HP to his name, but that is a successful utility clear from the side of PW. They're yet to claw a player back, though. They're still playing in that deficit as Kovacs starts his way into the deep freezer. Mr. Joe finds a retort, though. Spack falls. Dumfries is there to get an instantaneous trade, keeping that advantage in favor, but Magpie left in DBNO. So a technical 3 versus 3. 30 seconds left to go, and that revive does seem imminent, so it will be an official 4 versus 3. The vault inside a bathroom is likely. Pressure mounting as it hides on that window, acting as an ever-present threat, but Magpie finds that kill. It's going to be isolated now. Magpie finds kill, traded off by Mr. Joe, but it's all down to Mr. Joe now in a 1 versus 2. Can he find it? Can he make it work? 10 seconds left to work with. Volton in the freezer, clears the deep corner, and gets the quad kill, but no! In the dying seconds, Maestro comes alive, and the Alda sings to get the Deviants onto match point.
Oh my goodness, my heart skipped a beat right there. Mr. Joe has been carrying the torch for PW this entire evening thus far, but when it mattered the most, when it came down to pride, when it came down to getting an ace, Dumfries just had to shut him down. And specifically speaking for the Deviants, it could not have happened at a better time. This is exactly what I was alluding to at the very start of the round. Deviants in this second half have been on the back foot at each and every single turn, always forced to tie things up as opposed to being the ones that can actually maintain a round advantage. And now for the first time they've been able to do that. The first to hit 6 rounds ensures that they have guaranteed themselves at the very least a single point. And now this is the real test. Will it stand the test of time? Let's exactly see, because we are visiting a tertiary bomb site. Technically speaking, this is uncharted territory for the Deviants. We have no idea exactly how we're going to perform, or how the Deviants are going to perform, I should say, but they were able to win this out on their attacking half when it was actually PW's turn to visit reading. If you can... Yeah, this might sound just a tad bit cheesy, but best offense also makes for a great defense and vice versa. The Deviants, they might come into this particular final round of regulation potentially just a step ahead of PW.
PW are right now on the back foot. They know they can't make a single mistake. They have to claw this in overtime. They at least guarantee some points on the table for this one. And it's, again, you gotta think, they don't want to lose to a team that's yet to score points in this season. A matter of pride. They want to be able to fight with the best of the best in this season. And they need a lot of points to be able to take that fight to Man I Love Frogs. So this is going to be a massive blow if Deviants can confirm the victory right here, right now, as they will make their way towards this attacking position as PW. Again, it looks like they're going to be going for somewhat of a different strategy, putting pressure on this white side, the eastern portion of the building. It has worked out well for them, but Magpie enters the reading room, sorry, it should enters Gano, low HP, unsure about where that initial engagement came from, but a wounded Jaeger, this early stage of a round, is a big advantage for PW.
It really, really is. We also did catch a glimpse of Dumfries now rotating over towards that top floor, ensuring that Magpie can retreat back towards the bomb site. So Deviants, they're still holding onto the top floor, not necessarily with an iron grasp because of the fact that Magpie was injured quite heavily. And now Sundonis is going to head for the hills, take a little bit of fall damage, but hey, you're able to keep your life in tow, and you've already wasted 70 seconds of PW's time. But now the ingress has already commenced. There's still a player. Is that a player over by Shaiko that is hiding underneath the bar? I really can't tell, but if that turns out to be the case, it is Dumfries, and he actually pounces. He finds Mr. Joe, but he's unable to secure the frag. That could have been massive. A missed opportunity maybe on the side of the Deviants, but now PW know that there's a looming threat on the top floor that needs to be dealt with.
Well, Fab's that opening kill puts his team in a great position now. Drone spots out Dumfries. He's going to be the last bastion holding on to that top floor. He has support from the white stairs of Kovac, but will that be enough? We hear the AK-12 sing in the distance. Mr. Joe is reduced to low HP as well. Every second draining away. Deviants, you've got to hold on. Hold map control and take some lives with you for it. An 8 tossed out to the top of the white stairs, but doesn't connect. A push inside a freezer now, and a cascade of blue silhouettes making their presence known. Everyone holding on now from the side of Deviants. Can they make this final stand upstairs? The hide finds one of the Dumfries now as Kovac falls down the stairs in his vacant form. Knows he can't take this fight, but Sandanos creeps up the red stairs. That castle barrier still intact, however, so that might make this flank a little bit of an easier task. Can creep up without a direct vision. Might spot the player by Bikini and does so. Lands some shots and does a great job of doing so. Vabs falls, and now it's going to be a 4 versus 3. Deviants still in this fight, still have a chance. Out with 15 seconds left to go, they can hold on.
We hit mission critical, and PW, they need an entry. It's starting to run out. All the Deviants have to do is wait for PW to walk into their open arms, and that's exactly what Kovac is able to accomplish. Closer is trying to stick the plan, but we hit 000. You need to hold F. You need to do it. 2v2 as we see Sondana's working his way on in. From the pillar side, he's actually able to shut it down in tandem with Kovac, just ingressing his way in through library. That slipped through the fingertips of PW at the 11th hour, being in a technical 1v1, 1v2 scenario as the diffuser needed to be stuck is not the ideal position, but oh boy, that I was not expecting that whatsoever. My oh my.
I don't think a lot of people sitting and watching this matchup following our standings were expecting the Deviants to come out swinging. They looked in the opening couple of rounds like it was going to be a PW matchup, but they took information, they adapted, and they really did fight back tooth and nail. It came to the end of regulation. It was a very, very to the wire matchup, but ultimately they end the day getting their first points, and it's 3 points in the standings. That's a great result from them. It now means that they have a good foundation to launch their assault in the midfield.
I'm still kind of mind-boggled as to what exactly happened in that very, very last round, because we saw, and this is something that I do want to take a moment to chew on, we saw PW, they sat quite comfortably with the man advantage. It was a 4v3 scenario after they were able to shut down, I believe it was, I believe it must have been Dumfries who was on the top floor playing the mute as well. And I do have to really, really commend Dumfries as well for doing his best to sort of keep hold of the top floor. He was remaining as mobile as possible, kind of rotating in between construction and bar, always keeping his opponents guessing, which is something that I can always stand behind. But he got caught out, and then we had the Aruni climb up the red staircase, or the red staircase, find a crucial frag onto the Ash, vacates, goes back down to reinforce the bomb site, finds one, I believe, from Pillar, in towards the doorway, in towards reading, I should say, and then with Kovac chiming in with one of his own. It was scrappy. It was scrappy, and if we had replays tangible right now, I would definitely love to dive into it, but I guess we'll have to push that for, you know, the Bull podcast whenever that happens, but still. Just overall great stuff from both squads. There is not a whole lot that I actually do have to say because my mind is still processing exactly what happened in the last 20 seconds.
I mean, the biggest thing to digest from that is how it was back and forth, and I really do want to say that Deviants, when they took losses on certain sites, they learned from it very well. They made adaptations on the fly, they changed up their shape, what strategies they brought out, how they played. You know, they went from turtle strategies, bunkered up deep to objective, to a more expansive roam presence, and they always made good on their second time of asking of a site. A great result from them, but also, you know, let's not diminish, PW had a great showing as well. They were able to fight back. You know, the opening round, the offensive side, they were really pinned against the post. They had nowhere to go, and they had the cascade, get aggressive on that wide hallway, and they found the kills needed to get that round victory. So again, great victory for Deviants. A lot of lessons from PW, but also a great performance from them as a team. So keep looking forward to them as they move in. Again, I know a lot of the rivals around PW have took losses this week, so it's not the biggest upset for them, but a massive congratulations for Deviants finding their first 3 points of the season.
Indeed, and that technically ties them up in terms of overall point count with Team 9, but naturally because of round differential, they do inherit that 7th position from Team 9, and unfortunately enough for PW, they are going to continue sitting on 5 points, and they will have to wait for next week to see if they can leapfrog both Veggie Patch as well as the Ludens to try to once again narrow the gap with the Frogs, but because of how this particular week has gone by with the Ludens and PW, arguably sort of, well, taking their foot off of the gas in terms of remaining competitive with the Frogs, this is the largest gap that we have seen, and only being 3 weeks into Season 3, it means that the Frogs can continue to mount up their lead, which is really, really exciting to see. And speaking of the Frogs, I do believe that they're going to be playing next week on Tuesday against the Deviants themselves. That is a matchup that a lot of us are going to be looking out towards, specifically given how Deviants have performed this evening. Before we do sign off though, any closing thoughts, Dylan?
Okay, I've never been called my real name on a broadcast, and you've thrown me off with that one, so I mean...
Deal with it.
Oh, I despise you sometimes. Well, I mean, congratulations, of course, Deviants, finding their very first victory, getting their very first points on the board. And you said sets up for a very interesting match against Man I Love Frogs next week on Tuesday. So hopefully we get to see you there.
Indeed. So as things stand right now, let's quickly go ahead and give you guys the schedule for next week. On Monday, we will be kicking things off at 6 p.m. BST with the Ludens against the IOM. Cairo specifically touted that particular matchup as the one to watch from the entire weekend, but I'm pretty sure we'll get to hold him quite aggressively to that in case if it goes south. At 7 p.m. BST, then we've got the Wombats going up against Atlas, and to close off Monday night, we've got Team Trident against PW, which is going to be another really, really great matchup given the fact that Team Trident, they are back at full force with a full 5-man roster. No substitutes, no games, they are here to play, and then Tuesday Night Bull. For week number 4 consists of Deviants versus the Frogs, as well as Team 9 against Veggie Patch. That is the schedule for next week. But for now, back to reality. We'd like to thank you guys so much for tuning in to week number 3 of Badass University All-Star Season 3. I'd like to, as always, extend a massive thank you towards the people working behind the scenes, namely Science on observation, as well as Aaron stepping in Noah's absence to ensure that we always and can continue to broadcast the way that we always have. But from all of us here on the prod desk, on the prod crew, whatever it may be, whatever you want to call us, we'd like to thank you guys once again so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week on Monday, 6 p.m. BST sharp for the continuation of Season 3. Until then.